Signori, benvenuti a questo pomeriggio che si conclude e conclude il nostro festival. Abbiamo il grandissimo piacere di avere un grande ospite con noi, un giornalista internazionale, un giornalista che conosce molto bene il mondo e che conosce anche molto bene quello che sta succedendo proprio in questi giorni, attualità pura, quello che sta succedendo in Afghanistan. Lui viene dal Pakistan, è una delle persone, anzi l'unica persona che per ben 3 volte ha intervistato Osama Bin Laden. Sono appena ricorsi i 20 anni dal crollo delle Torri Gemelle, quindi crediamo che nessuno come lui oggi ci possa raccontare come è cambiato il mondo da quel momento e che cosa magari ci aspetta nel futuro. Quindi io do subito la parola a Hamid Mir, che sarà accompagnato in questa conversazione da Stefano Piazza. Grazie.
Buongiorno a tutti, grazie. Una piccola nota personale. Desidero ringraziare dal profondo del cuore gli organizzatori che hanno deciso di affidarmi questo momento. Sono veramente grato perché ho sognato per molti anni di incontrare Hamid Mir, del quale ho letto moltissime cose, e oggi, grazie a voi, sono riuscito a realizzare questo sogno. Grazie ancora. Una persona a te cara ti diceva in continuazione: della tua vita fai quello che vuoi, ma ricordati non fare il giornalista, perché fare il giornalista è un mestiere molto pericoloso. Quell'uomo era suo padre, Varis Mir, morto in circostanze misteriose, diciamo misteriose, che gli ha trasmesso questa straordinaria lezione di passione civile, perché il nostro amico che viene dall'altra parte del mondo è un cercatore di verità, ma è un uomo libero ed è una persona innamorata dei diritti umani, dei diritti dell'informazione. E quindi oggi abbiamo una fortuna incredibile di averlo qui con noi. Partiamo subito con la prima domanda, che non può essere non una domanda sull'Afghanistan. In Afghanistan è stato annunciato recentemente il nuovo governo, che è formato di molte personalità. Almeno 5 sono terroristi di Al-Qaeda. Alcuni di loro erano nel famigerato campo di prigionia di Guantanamo. Cominciamo con questa. Conferma? È vero?
First of all, good afternoon. And it's a privilege to speak to you people. I have been to Switzerland in the past many times, but this is the first time I'm in Lugano. And it's a very beautiful city. The people are very good. But before I start responding your questions, I would like to condole you people with the recent death of the mayor of Lugano. So when I came to know that he died a few days back, so I thought that I should condole with the people of Lugano, because I heard he was a very good man. Thank you. Now, you asked me first question about the Guantanamo Bay prison. And you mentioned 5 people?
Yeah.
I think there are more than 5 people in the Guantanamo Bay prison. And they belong to different countries. There are people from Afghanistan, maybe there are some people from Pakistan, from some Arab countries also. But the mastermind of the 9/11 attacks was not Osama bin Laden. He only implemented the 9/11 plan. The mastermind was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was arrested in 2003, and he is still in Guantanamo Bay, and there are some other people who are in Guantanamo Bay. Now, you see, this is very important to note that 20 years have been passed. He was arrested in 2003, 2 years after 9/11. So he is in the custody of the Americans from last 18 years, and he is not convicted yet. So this is, you see, a very important thing to analyze, that I think that he is the mastermind, and the 9/11 attacks could have been prevented. This is, you see, important to speak in the West. The information which I am sharing with you, it is in the knowledge of the Americans, but it is not in the knowledge of most of our European friends. This man, whose name was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, and he is in the Guantanamo prison, he was also involved in the bombing of the World Trade Center in 1993. And the American security agency, FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, they were following those people who were involved in the World Trade Center bombing in 1993. And one officer of the FBI, he came to know in 1995 that this man, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, is planning to hijack some airplanes, and he want to destroy the airplanes in different American cities. This is 1995, many years before 9/11. So he started following him. He was following him in different countries. And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed came to Qatar. And in Qatar, the FBI officials, they tried to arrest him. But at that time, the American diplomats in Qatar, they never approved the idea. FBI even arranged a special plane. They brought it to Qatar, so then we will arrest him, so we have to transfer him back to the United States. But the American diplomats never approved the idea. They took some time. After 2-3 days, when they gave permission to arrest him, the person escaped. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed escaped. So he arrived Pakistan, and from Pakistan he slipped inside Afghanistan. At that time, when FBI came to know about the 9/11 attacks, and FBI was trying to arrest him, he was not part of Al-Qaeda. He joined Al-Qaeda in 1999. He was looking for someone who can finance, who can provide him some people who can implement the idea of attacks inside United States. And then in 1999, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed met Osama bin Laden in Afghanistan. And that's how they discussed the plan, and they were planning for the 9/11 attacks for 2 years. And in those 2 years, again, the Americans came to know about the movement of at least 4 hijackers who were involved in 9/11 attacks. And because of the lack of coordination between different American agencies, those 4 people who were on the radar of the American security agencies, they were not stopped. They entered inside America, and finally, they successfully implemented one of the most bloodiest attacks in the history of America. So because you started from Guantanamo Bay, so I have also started the story of one prisoner who is in Guantanamo Bay. He could have been prevented, Americans were in a position to stop him. They missed him. In 1995, the FBI wanted to arrest him. They missed him. Then again, they got a chance to stop the 4 hijackers who were sent by Osama bin Laden to enter in America. But so at least 2 times they missed the chance. And if you read the 9/11 Commission report, they confessed, yes, there was a chance to arrest Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. There was a chance to prevent the 9/11 attacks. But they failed due to lack of coordination between the security agencies. So this is, you see, a technical reason I am telling you. And Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he confessed everything while in the investigation. Last 18 years, he gave a lot of details to the Americans, but still he is not convicted. But there are some other people who have been convicted, like a lady, her name is Afia Siddiqui. She was not involved in 9/11 attacks. She was only arrested from Afghanistan, and she was convicted for 86 years. She's in a US prison. So this is, I am not talking about the political reasons, the justifications which Osama bin Laden gave, why he attacked America. We will come on those points later. But Americans were in a position to stop 9/11 attacks. They failed because of the incompetence of the security agencies. So this is the first lesson of the 20 years after 9/11. Many people were killed in the last 20 years, not only in America, but also in European countries, and Middle Eastern countries, and South Asian countries, and everywhere, due to the incompetence of the security agencies. We spend a lot of time on our security agencies. Sometimes they do very good work. Sometimes they are incredible. They have made a lot of sacrifices. But sometimes they are failed in United States. Sometimes they are failed in England. You have witnessed London bombing. Sometimes they are failed in Spain. You have witnessed Madrid bombing. Sometimes they are failed in France. You have seen Paris bombing. Sometimes they are failed in Pakistan, in my country. The security agencies, they claim that they have done a lot of good work, but many times they were failed. And the reason is the lack of coordination, the mistrust. They don't trust each other. And this is a very important point, and I would like to mention the recent takeover of Afghanistan by Taliban. Just few days before the capture of Kabul by Taliban, the American President Joe Biden, he was giving interview on the American media, and he was saying that it's not possible that Taliban can capture the capital Kabul again, because the Afghan army is very strong. They are more than 300,000 soldiers. They have air force. They have big guns. Afghan Taliban are only 75,000. When I heard Joe Biden on American media, I was, you see, confused, because I wrote in June 2021, 2 months before the fall of Kabul, 2 months before the Taliban captured Kabul, I wrote in June, the Taliban are going to take over Kabul, and the Afghan president Ashraf Ghani will run away.
Amir, scusa, ti interrompo perché entriamo adesso proprio nella questione degli accordi di Doha.
I just mentioned because, again, the intelligence was failed.
Ecco, appunto, tu nella tua carriera hai intervistato i più grandi leader del mondo e hai fatto degli incontri straordinari. Si può dire che sei un uomo con i piedi nella storia. Pochi possono vantare questo. E allora ti chiedo, ma per quale motivo gli americani hanno fatto un tavolo, hanno costruito un tavolo di discussione con i talebani a Doha, in Qatar, Qatar che è sponsor di questi gruppi, e gli hanno consegnato il paese? Puoi spiegarci, perché credo che questa sia la domanda, per quale motivo gli americani hanno consegnato il paese ai talebani?
After 9/11, from 2002 to 2013, I interviewed at least 4 US Secretary of States. Whenever I interviewed Colin Powell or Condoleezza Rice or Hillary Clinton and John Kerry, I asked them questions about Afghanistan, and they said, we are winning this war against terror. And they were not ready to give any indication about talks with Taliban. But in 2013, it was very obvious that President Obama allowed Taliban to establish their political office in Qatar. And when their political office in Qatar was opened, it was clear to journalists like me that the Americans will slowly and gradually move towards the talks. And when the talks started between Taliban and Americans, I was thinking about the interviews I'd done with bin Laden, because bin Laden predicted those talks between Taliban and America. At that time, when he was making those predictions, I was not ready to believe him. I thought America is a superpower, and the bin Laden is responsible for killing of thousands of the innocent Americans. So the Americans will not talk to Taliban. But they started talking to Taliban. I'm not against the idea of talking to Taliban, but you see, you asked me a very important question, why the Americans started talks with Taliban, because I think that they spent a lot of money in their war in Afghanistan, billions, not billions, trillions of dollars. But their main target was to hunt down bin Laden. So they hunted down bin Laden in 2011. After 2011, this is my analysis, not information, this is my understanding, that the Americans were watching China. They thought that we are busy in war against terror. We opened many fronts, not only Afghanistan, we are also involved in Iraq and in some other countries also. And we are spending money on war. On the other side, China is expanding its economic power all over the world. So now it's the time to stop the Chinese economic power. So they wanted to focus on China. So that's why they started wrapping up their war in Afghanistan, and slowly and gradually they started talks in Doha. The Doha agreement last year, which was signed by Taliban and United States of America, that was violated by Taliban, that was violated by the Americans. How? Taliban violated Doha agreement by invading Kabul using military power. And the Americans were committed to leave Afghanistan after 31st August. But they abandoned Afghanistan on 15th of August. That was also a violation. I don't say that they should remain there. No. Both parties were bound to implement the Doha Agreement. But the way the Americans and their allies, they left Afghanistan, I think it was humiliating for their people. It was like breaking big promises with the Afghan people. And when the Afghan army, they realized that Americans are going to leave us alone, so they abandoned their services and they disappeared and they gave uh, an excuse to Taliban to take over Kabul. So I think that basically why the Americans started talks with the Taliban, one, their main objective was to take revenge from Bin Laden, so they killed Bin Laden in 2011. Second reason was they wanted to focus on China, so they wanted to run away from the region, so they ran away.
Senti, ora c'è chi ritiene che l'Afghanistan sia un vero e proprio narco-terror state. Sei d'accordo con questa definizione? E in tutto questo, che farà la Cina che tu hai citato prima? Cosa faranno i cinesi in questo contesto? Davvero collaboreranno con il regime? Si serviranno delle materie prime? È possibile questo o la realtà poi rispetto alla narrazione giornalistica è molto diversa?
When I met Osama bin Laden first time in 1997, at that time he predicted an alliance between Taliban, China, and Iran. That was unimaginable for me at that time because in 1997 the Taliban regime had a lot of problems with Iran. I thought it's not possible. But within 1 year, in 1998, Mr. Clinton was the president of America. He fired some cruise missiles on Afghanistan. So some of the cruise missiles were not exploded. The Taliban regime at that time, they handed over those unexploded cruise missiles to the Chinese. And the Chinese, they stole the technology of the cruise missile. So, as a journalist, I know since 1998 that the Taliban and Chinese have some backdoor contacts. And after 9/11, due to the US invasion of Iraq, ISIS, which is called Islamic State, ISIS was also created in Iraq. And ISIS is very dangerous, very lethal, killing innocent people, not only in Iraq, Syria, but also in Europe, also in Afghanistan. So I think that the rise of ISIS threatened Iran and China. And previously, it was only China which was having close contacts with Iran. After the rise of ISIS, the Iranians, they also established some channels with the Taliban. And now the Iranians and Chinese and even the Russians, they are also providing support to Taliban. So when you talk about China, you see, you should also talk about Iran. I interviewed former president of Afghanistan, Mr. Hamid many years back. He was the president before Ashraf Ghani, who escaped with a lot of dollars. So one day I was interviewing President Ashraf Ghani in Kabul in his presidential palace. So we were, after finishing the interview, I told Mr. Karzai, I said, Mr. Karzai, according to my information, your intelligence have some reports about the links between the Taliban and Iran. He said, yes, you are right. I have the evidence. I said, why don't you share that evidence with the international community? I said, you have accused Pakistan many times. You always say that Pakistan is supporting Taliban. So if you have evidence, you should also speak about Iran. He said, Pakistan is like a brother. So I can abuse or accuse my brother. I know the brother will not take any action against me. Iranians are very dangerous people. So I cannot blame Iran or I cannot abuse or accuse Iran. So,
come ho detto prima, tra i tantissimi incontri della tua vita ce ne sono alcuni che sono davvero incredibili. Parleremo diffusamente dopo di Osama Bin Laden, ma ti chiedo ora di raccontarmi il tuo incontro con il Mullah Omar, che è una figura importantissima. Noi ce lo ricordiamo in fuga dalle montagne di Tora Bora con la bicicletta, con la motocicletta, ci ricorderemo di questa figura iconica, che poi morì nel 2013, ma venne resa nota la sua morte nel 2015, se non mi sbaglio. Raccontami chi era quest'uomo. Era un religioso, era un combattente, era un politico, era tutte e tre le cose?
You are asking me questions which I should respond in detail, because for your consumption you should understand what I am saying. But I will try to make it short. Okay. You see, Mullah Umar was he was a person who participated in the war against the former Soviet Union, and he lost one of his eyes. So he was a one-eyed man. And in 1994, there were some problems in Afghanistan. The groups which defeated Soviet Union, they were fighting against each other. So a civil war started in Afghanistan. Again, the civil war started because the Americans left Afghanistan abruptly. Other international agencies like United Nations, everyone ran away from Afghanistan. So they started fighting with each other. So they were very powerful people because they had money and the weapons which were given to them by the West against Soviet Union. So there were some students of different religious schools. They had a problem. Now, maybe it is very difficult for me to explain. The problem was the sodomy. Some of the Afghan commanders, they were marrying and raping little boys. So the parents of those boys, they were making complaints here and there. There was no government in Afghanistan. So some of them contacted Mullah Umar, who was living in a small village. They said, we are facing this problem, civil war, this. Now the governor of Kandahar, he kidnapped my son, and you see, he's using him like his wife. So what should I do? So Mullah Umar got very angry. He said, I have only one rifle, one Kalashnikov. I need some money and some more weapons. If you can arrange weapons for me, I can help you. So the people collected some donations. They bought some weapons for them. And then they attacked those people who were creating problems for them. And slowly and gradually, the common people, they started supporting them. That was a time when the Pakistani government noticed that we can use this student militia for our strategic reasons. Taliban means students. So that's why they are famous as Taliban, because most of them were students at that time. So an American oil company, Unocoal, they also needed some people in Afghanistan who can provide safety to their project, a gas pipeline from Turkmenistan to Pakistan via Afghanistan. Now, I am an eyewitness of one event. I was visiting America with my prime minister in 1995, and the US officials, they were forcing the prime minister of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, to support Taliban. So I wrote an article and I criticized my prime minister. I criticized the Americans. I said, why they are supporting Taliban? Because the Taliban, maybe they have done some good things, but they have shut down the girls' schools. So this is very bad. And the prime minister of my country is a woman. So how can she support a militia in Afghanistan which is shutting down the girls' schools? So the prime minister called me. She said, you are right, I am not supporting Taliban because of their ideology. I have some problems. You understand my problem? I said, yeah, I understand your problem. You are under pressure of the Americans. She said, yeah, this is the strategic issue. We need a pipeline police in Afghanistan. So Mullah Umar was actually the chief of a pipeline police. He was actually used for the interest of an American oil company. Okay? And the person who signed Doha deal last year with Taliban, what is his name? Zalmay Khalilzad. In 1997, Zalmay Khalilzad arranged the visit of a Taliban delegation to United States because at that time Zalmay Khalilzad was working for the same oil company. So actually it was the interest of an oil company which forced the Americans and the Pakistani government to start supporting Taliban. Then there is a small story. My Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto, she decided for some reasons that why should I facilitate this big American oil company to set up the gas pipeline from Turkmenistan to Pakistan? Why not an Argentinian oil company, Bridas? So she gave the project to Argentinian oil company, Bridas. Now there was a new war started between Argentinian company and the American oil company and the American government and the Pakistani government, and ultimately the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, was dismissed. And after her dismissal, the new government in Pakistan, they recognized Taliban. So that's how Mullah Umar became a big player in the region. Credit goes to an oil company.
Senti, hai citato una donna importantissima per te perché era anche una tua amica, primo ministro del Pakistan, Benazir Bhutto, che sapeva che sarebbe stata uccisa e te lo confidò durante un colloquio. Perché morì Benazir Bhutto e chi la uccise?
It's a very sad story. And whenever someone asks me about that, you see, it made me very sad. In 2007, when she came back to Pakistan after spending many years in exile, at that time, a military dictator was ruling Pakistan, and he banned me on TV, so I was banned. One day, Benazir Bhutto called me, and she said, Hamid, they are going to kill me. I said, who? She said, General Pervez Musharraf. She named the person who was ruling Pakistan at that time. And then she said, you are a good journalist. I know you since long when you were very young. So this is your responsibility. When they will kill me, you will expose my killers. I said, how can I expose your killers? I am banned. I cannot work in Pakistan. She said, I know you are banned in Pakistan, but you are not banned outside Pakistan. You can write in some American or British or European newspapers, but they are going to kill me. I started crying. There were tears in my eyes. Maybe because of my helplessness. And because the former Prime Minister, she's sitting in front of me and she's telling me she will be killed. And she's depending upon me that a journalist who is banned in Pakistan, I will expose her killers. So I said, are you sure? She said, yes, I'm sure. I said, then why you came back to Pakistan? You see, she was a politician. And she said that I spent many years in exile. Now, if I will stay outside Pakistan, maybe I will be killed there, or maybe I will have some natural death there. So it's better to come back to my country and being killed on my own homeland. And then we discussed many things. I said, okay, you write an email to me and some American journalist or some British journalist. So if there is some problem, so after your death, we can share that email from you to international media. She immediately did that. And when she was killed, I was not in emergency to report the event because I was banned. I was trying to find out her email. And finally I found out the email. And I shared that email with the American journalist Wolf Blitzer on CNN. And then Wolf Blitzer, he named Pervez Musharraf. He said, Benazir Bhutto nominated her killer before her death. And after some time, United Nations set up an inquiry commission. The inquiry commission came to Pakistan. They asked me, what do you know? So I shared this whole story which I shared with you. I shared it with the United Nations Inquiry Commission.
Ti ringrazio molto. Senti, adesso parliamo di un incontro importantissimo che tu hai avuto nella tua vita, perché tu hai intervistato Osama Bin Laden non una volta, non due, ma 3 volte. Ma innanzitutto la curiosità di tutti, anche del giornalista, è come hai fatto ad incontrarlo? Com'è che fu questo incontro? In che lingua parlavate? Mangiaste insieme? Furono incontri informali? Che tipo di uomo era? Cioè, la domanda interessante è sapere, ma era un pazzo, un narcisista patologico, un guerriero oppure un religioso? E poi raccontami quello che mi hai detto ieri, che avete anche litigato, perché questo lo devono sentire tutti.
So I counted, you asked 7 questions in one go.
Sì, perché per ragioni di spazio bisogna condensare le domande. Io starei qui anche fino a stasera, però non possiamo.
I partially responded the first question. I told you that when I wrote an article full of criticism about my Prime Minister, so she called me. She tried to explain her position. Then she asked one of her ministers, he was Interior Minister, Mr. Nasirullah Babar. And he asked her to send Hamid Mir to Afghanistan. He should go there and meet Taliban. And then, as an independent journalist, he's free to write anything. But he is convinced that the Taliban are working for the Americans. So he should go to Afghanistan and see himself with his own eyes what kind of people they are. So when I went to Afghanistan and I met Taliban people, they were already angry with me. They never read my article. They heard about my article on Radio Iran. So Radio Iran was using my article to accuse Taliban that they are working for the Americans. And the Taliban were so much angry. And they said, how do you prove, how can you prove that we are working for the Americans? I said, I am eyewitness. In New York, the US Assistant Secretary of State, Robin Raphael, she was asking my Prime Minister Benazir Bhutto to support Taliban. The Taliban asked, who is Robin Raphael? I said, she is Assistant Secretary of State. They asked, is she a woman? I said, yes. Then I got the point that they have problem with women. I said, no, she is not the only woman who is supporting you. There is another woman, Benazir Bhutto. So at 2 women supporting you. So they were very angry. They said, okay, we are hosting the biggest enemy of America here in Afghanistan. Do you know Osama bin Laden? I said, no, I don't know. And frankly speaking, I should be honest with you people. In 1997, I was not aware who is Osama bin Laden. Because he was not very famous. They said, okay, we will fix your meeting with him. But we need one promise from you. I said, what is the promise? If we will fix your meeting with bin Laden, then you will write, we are not working for the Americans. I said, okay, done. So that's how I reached to Osama bin Laden.
Senti, ma che uomo era? Che impressione ti ha fatto nei vostri colloqui? L'impressione era quella di, come ti ho detto prima, un narcisista, un religioso, un combattente. E perché decise, pur sapendo che questo lo avrebbe distrutto, di attaccare l'America? Tu l'hai visto 3 volte, anche dopo l'11 settembre, e penso che non ci sia nessuno meglio di te che ce lo possa spiegare.
You see, when I met him first time in 1997, at that time, I was thinking that this man is very dangerous. He may create some problem. In 1998, I confronted him again. And whatever he said, I published. I was not the only person who met him and interviewed him and published his views. There was a very famous British journalist, Robert Fisk. He met Osama bin Laden before me in Sudan. Then another American journalist, Peter Arnett, he interviewed him for CNN. So it was obvious that bin Laden was making big claims. And my interviews in 1997 and 1998 were published. The US Embassy must have read those interviews. They must have translated those interviews. Robert Fisk was writing, Peter Arnett was writing. It was not a secret that he was planning attacks against America. But I don't know why they failed to stop the attack. So maybe they were undermining his claims. But you asked me what kind of person he was. When I met him first time, we had a problem. Because I met him in a big cave complex in the mountains. And he had a lot of security procedures. And when me and my cameraman, we entered in the cave, so his security guards started our body search. So we were used the body search at the airports. You don't need to take off your clothes. So first of all, they said, okay, we will not ask you to take off your clothes, but we will put our hands inside your clothes and we will check each and everything. So you see my friend, they put their hands inside our clothes, and they were checking some very sensitive things. You understand?
Yeah.
I was very angry. I said, I'm going back. I don't want to meet your leader. And suddenly Bin Laden appeared and he apologized to me. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Even they do the same thing with my family members. And so we calmed down. And then it was evening time. And I thought that we will interview him and then we will go back. And he announced, oh, you are going to spend the whole night with us. Oh,
One night with
one night. But after some time, his son, he was 6 or 7 years old, he came and he just sat in the lap of his father. So we were relaxed that he's a family man. Next morning when I interviewed him, so interview was very dangerous. And in next few years, I noticed that the man is very soft-spoken, but his actions are always different from his words. So I think that he was not a holy warrior or a religious warrior. He was fighting for some of his political objectives. Whenever he tried to take cover of the religion, he was not convincing. But whenever he tried to exploit some contradictions in the American policies, or he tried to exploit the contradictions of the American policies in Middle East, so I felt that he's good on using politics for gaining his objectives. I think he was only taking a revenge. He was expelled from Saudi Arabia. He took refuge in Sudan. Then the Saudi government forced the Sudanese government to expel him. He started problems with the Americans. He came to Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, he tried to teach lesson to the Americans. And he told me once that I will trap America in Afghanistan and we will defeat them. And they will start talks with the Taliban. So that was, you see, it was not a religious service. It was his revenge. He was trying to take revenge from the Americans. The Americans took revenge from him. So you can say that he was taking the cover of the religion, but he was not a religious man. He is not a good example of a religion. He only used religion for his political objectives. You have some groups in Europe, some groups in Latin America. They also use violence for achieving their political goals. So that's what Bin Laden did.
Senti, lui parlava inglese, urdu e arabo. L'intervista l'avete fatta in quale lingua? Perché mi risulta che lui rispondeva solamente in arabo e aveva un traduttore. Puoi dirci il nome di questo traduttore?
He's a very sharp journalist. You see, I interviewed Bin Laden like I am talking to you people through the interpreter. But she was not there. She was not there. When I first time met him in 1997 and we started our conversation and he said sorry to me, he was speaking English. So I thought it's easy. He will talk to me in English. But when we started interview, there was one interpreter. I was asking questions to the interpreter in English. He was translating in Arabic. Bin Laden was responding back in Arabic. Then it was coming to me in English. It was a long process. So I asked him why you are doing that. He said, this is our procedure. Okay. Second time in 1998, you know who was the interpreter? Dr. Ayman Zawahiri, a big leader of Al-Qaeda.
Uno a caso, Ayman al-Zawahiri.
So I know you wanted to listen his name.
Yeah.
In the third interview after 9/11, again Dr. Zawari was the interpreter. But you see, the third interview was done in the middle of the war. There was bombing. Death was dancing around me. I was under so much pressure. I was not sure that I will go back alive. But that person who was giving me interview, he was talking with a fearless smile on his face. And his fearless smile on his face was, you see, pinching me. That I'm not sure I will go back alive. And this man, he is smiling in front of me. So I was behaving normal. He was behaving abnormal. And then we finished the interview. You know how we finished the interview abruptly, because I asked him a very a tough question, you can say, which was not liked by him. I said, "Is it true that you married the daughter of Mullah Umar, and that's why he is not ready to hand over you to the Americans?" He responded my question, but he was angry and switched off. He switched off the tape recorder. And then he said, "Okay, we just have tea and you can go back." So when we were having tea, I asked him, "You can speak English. Why don't you respond my questions in English?" He said, "I am an Arab. How can I respond your questions in English?" And I said, "You are a nationalist. No difference between you and Saddam Hussein." And the other thing, which he said on the record, which was published, when I asked him that, "Is it true that you married the daughter of Mullah Umar?" He said, "We only marry Arab women." So, is it expected from a holy warrior or a religious warrior who only speak Arabic on the record and he only marries Arab women? This is the difference between ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Because Al-Qaeda, I think this Al-Qaeda, most of the Arabs fighters who were part of Al-Qaeda, they belong to Egypt, they belong to Syria, and they were proud Arabs. But most of the ISIS fighters, they don't believe in nationalism, they don't believe in borders. They want to establish an international government. And some of them are disgruntled, misguided European youth from Germany, from France, from here and from there. This is the difference you must understand between Al-Qaeda and ISIS. That's why I often says that we are living in more dangerous time, and we never learned any lessons after 9/11. And we have to do something, some collective effort to stop these genies like ISIS and Al-Qaeda.
Senti, ci stiamo avviando verso la fine, aiutami anche tu con i tempi, se no mi licenziano, non mi richiamano più. Ascolta, ti chiedo, dov'eri l'11 settembre e che cosa fu il tuo primo pensiero? E quando reincontrasti Osama Bin Laden, off the records, ammise le sue responsabilità oppure no?
When I met Osama Bin Laden, I was aware that if I will ask him a direct question, "Are you responsible for the 9/11 attacks?" So he will respond back like a clever politician and he will deny. So my interview with him is available. You can read. It was published in Dawn newspaper. So if he was clever, I was also trying to be clever. So I was posing him questions like a trap. I was not asking him directly that why you did that or are you responsible for those attacks or not. I was asking him, what do you think about those who organized attacks of 9/11? And he started supporting them. Then I said, how do you How do you know that all of them were the Muslims? He started mentioning their names. Then I said, how can you justify your attacks in the light of the religious teachings, because you killed innocent non-Muslims? You cannot kill innocent non-Muslims because in Islam, the blood of innocent non-Muslim is equal to the blood of a Muslim. So he tried to justify his attacks. And in the middle of the interview, he realized that he admitted everything. So when we finished and we were having tea, so I said, Mr. Bin Laden, you gave me all the answers of my questions. Why don't you accept it directly that you are responsible for the 9/11 attacks? So he very arrogantly said, will the American president accept that he is providing weapons to Israel and Israel is killing innocent Palestinian children? Will he accept the responsibility? I said, he will not accept the responsibility because he is a politician. But you are not a politician. You claims to be a religious warrior. So you should be honest. You should accept the responsibility. He said, you are trying to trap me. You cannot trap me. But he was already trapped.
Senti, fin qui abbiamo parlato di persone brutte e cattive, però io so che c'è tra le tante tue interviste una alla quale sei molto affezionato, che è quella a Nelson Mandela, ma di quella ti chiederò di rispondermi alla fine. Ti chiedo com'è la tua vita oggi, perché comunque il tuo impegno civile, la tua voglia di raccontare i fatti ti è costata addirittura 2 attentati, minacce, licenziamenti, sospensioni, insomma una cosa che noi non conosciamo per fortuna. Com'è la tua vita oggi, come svolgi la tua professione, come convivi con queste cose, e ti chiedo se a volte la sera, prima di addormentarti, hai paura.
Thank you for asking me this question, but mostly I don't focus on myself. But you asked me a question which I think is related to the post 9/11 situation. After 9/11, when Pakistan became an ally of America, so our government started using some terror laws to fight the terrorism. But like many other countries, the military dictator in our country, he started using terror laws against free media, against human rights activists, against democratic forces. So the journalists like me, we started criticizing him. And as I told you earlier, I was banned in 2007. And there are thousands of the missing persons in Pakistan. We call enforced disappearances. There are not hundreds, but thousands of people who were picked up by security agencies. They used anti-terror laws. They were not militants. They were political workers who were only demanding for their rights. Even the women, they picked up the women. So journalists like me, we were demanding to the government that produce these people in a court of law. You cannot put them behind the bars without any trial. So that was a big problem, and that's why I faced many problems. And then in 2012, a young girl, Malala Yousafzai, I also discovered her when she was only 11 years old. So she came to my show and she became very famous. So she was shot in 2012 by the Taliban. She was shot by the Taliban. So I criticized Taliban. And the Taliban, they made some very nasty, dirty allegations on her character. And she was only 13, 14 years old girl. So I became very angry and I challenged Taliban in my live show. Maybe I crossed the professional red line, and I instigated them, so they came after me. So they tried to kill me through a bomb, but I survived. And again in 2014, this issue of the violation of the human rights in Pakistan by some of our agencies, I was criticizing them, so I was attacked. I got 6 bullets, 2 bullets still in my body. So it's my personal story, but there are many journalists in Pakistan, many human rights activists who paid the price. So we are talking about the war against terror, the 20 years after 9/11. So there are many victims of the war against terror, and one of the victims are the media freedom in Pakistan, the human rights in Pakistan, democracy in Pakistan. So the journalists like me, again, I am banned today. I am banned today when I am talking, third time banned. But why? No court in Pakistan ordered a ban on me. So I am banned without any court order, without any notification. There are many people, thousands of people who are disappeared, who are missing. Nobody is ready to produce them in a court of law, but they are missing. They are living life in some hideouts or prisons, unannounced prisons, not prison like Guantanamo Bay, which is very famous in the world, and you know the name of the people who are present there. But in Pakistan, thousands of people are missing. And democracy is also a victim. In last 20 years, there is no genuine democracy in my country. Our parliament is not very strong. Our judiciary is not very independent. But I am very optimistic. I was asked many times to leave Pakistan to take political asylum in some European countries. It was very easy for me, but I decided to remain there because for me, I think running away is not the solution. If I will run away, then other people will also run away. So I should remain there and fight there and come to you, to speak to you just for 3-4 days, and I should go back immediately.
Senti, io ti faccio l'ultima domanda. Ti chiedo di Nelson Mandela. Finiamo con qualcosa di bello, un ricordo positivo.
You see, thank you very much for asking me this question, because in last 20 years, wherever I visited, wherever I was invited for a conference or seminar, everybody was talking to me about Osama bin Laden. But I am a journalist, and I interviewed President Nelson Mandela 2 years before I interviewed Osama bin Laden. So I interviewed President Nelson Mandela in New Zealand in 1995. And it is also a very interesting story. When I was a student, so I was a great fan of President Nelson Mandela. So it was my dream to meet him. So I was part of a delegation which visited New Zealand for a Commonwealth conference. And President Mandela was there. So I requested my president, the then president of Pakistan. So I requested him, like I actually begged him. I said, Mr. President, can you fix my interview with President Nelson Mandela? He said, I am not your fixer. I said, no, I am just making a request. Can you talk to him? He said, okay, I will try. So he was very kind. So he spoke to President Nelson Mandela. So President Nelson Mandela, he said, okay. So he gave me 10 minutes. So when I reached to the place where he was staying, and I sat in front of him, so he said, young man, where is Pakistan? So I tried to explain Pakistan is next to India, and here is China. and here is Iran, and I am in the center. So he said, okay. So how many provinces do you have? So I started responding his questions, and I realized that I am not interviewing him. He started my interview, and 10 minutes finished. And his staff came in, and staff said, "Thank you, sir, your time is over." I started crying to the President Mandela. I said, "President, you never allowed me to even ask one question. So you are asking me question. Please give me more time." So he was very kind. He said, "Okay, you have 15 minutes now." So that's how he gave me 15 minutes interview in 1995. And you see, my dear friend, I did 3 interviews with Bin Laden and spent a night with him also. Long interviews, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. But for me as a journalist, that 15 minutes interview with President Nelson Mandela was my biggest achievement. So I can take pride in that 15 minutes interview of Nelson Mandela. Osama bin Laden was just a story for me. As a journalist, I interviewed him again and again because I was covering a story. But I met President Mandela. He was my hero. So that's why I take pride.
Grazie mille, grazie mille. Ora c'è la possibilità di porre qualche domanda al nostro ospite. Io vi ringrazio ancora moltissimo.
Grazie. Hamid, just 2 minutes. I want to say something to the organizer. Ecco, signore e signori, come organizzatore di un altro evento, grande evento della Svizzera italiana, ecco, non volevo intervenire, però molto spontaneamente, dopo aver conosciuto 2 personalità del programma e soprattutto Hamid Mir, ho l'impressione che questo festival rispecchi profondamente la vocazione di una Lugano che non è più la cittadina che ho conosciuto da ragazzino, ma che oggi è un centro importantissimo anche geopoliticamente e che ha la reazione del pubblico qui lo dimostra, sono le stesse vibrazioni che ci sono state tra voi e Hamid Mir, adesso, che ci sono in Piazza Grande quando abbiamo dei personaggi che le meritano veramente. Vibrazioni come questo pomeriggio estremamente positive. E io credo dunque che stiamo assistendo, almeno questa è la mia impressione da 77enne, che stiamo vivendo un periodo eccezionale con questo festival che è agli inizi, ma che potrebbero essere gli anni di qualche cosa di molto importante qui a Lugano. Hamid Mir è un personaggio mondiale. È venuto da Islamabad direttamente a Zurigo e domani torna di nuovo a Islamabad per essere qui a Lugano e portare la voce della libertà, la voce del coraggio, la voce che mostra che il giornalismo non deve mai morire, il giornalismo libero, il giornalismo indipendente, il giornalismo che porta la luce nel buio, il mestiere del giornalismo, che non è un mestiere facile, soprattutto quando tu e la tua famiglia vivete con protezioni, vivete con le minacce, e fare il giornalista significa veramente credere nella missione dell'uomo. Abbiamo di tanto in tanto anche avuto a Locarno questi straordinari personaggi e forse la responsabilità dell'artista è di effettivamente di dire sempre quello che sente indipendentemente dalle conseguenze anche per lui, e questo vale profondamente per il giornalista. Io sono profondamente ammirato da quello che gli organizzatori sono riusciti a mettere in piedi, ma anche dal personaggio che oggi qui abbiamo a Lugano, e devo dire sì, un grande applauso a lui, perché
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I have a question for you. And we have seen over the time all the many countries, especially lately the US, trying to impose democracy in some territories, in some countries, in the Middle East, and as well in Afghanistan lately. My question is that something that you see that possible? Is democracy something that can be implemented in those territories in which there's all these tribal, if you want, set up, historically speaking? Is this something that is worth doing, or they don't just want it? It's just that they want to rule themselves like they've done in the past, hundreds and thousands of years. Thank you.
You see, you asked a very important question, but my observation is different. I will start from my country. In Pakistan, the Americans never tried to promote or protect democracy. They always supported military dictators. The first military dictator, General Ayub Khan, he was supported by the Americans because he gave them military bases against Russia. They supported the second military dictator, General Zia, because he was helping US war in Afghanistan. And then Pervez Musharraf, another military dictator, he started supporting US policies after 9/11. So supporting US policies, 9/11 is not a problem. But problem is that when Pervez Musharraf was using anti-terror laws against democratic forces, against free media, against human rights activists, at that time, the American government never played the due role which was expected from them. The second example is Egypt. In Egypt, the Americans never tried to impose democracy or promote democracy. You can have difference of opinion with some political leaders of Egypt. But whenever there was an election in Egypt and some political party or leader who was critical of the US policies, if he got elected, so his government was overthrown by the Egyptian army with the help of the Americans. And I asked this question to the US Secretary of State, John Kerry, when I interviewed him. I said, Mr. Kerry, why your government is supporting the military coup in Egypt? So he never responded back satisfactorily. So I can give you many examples in Algeria and other countries. Yes, there is a civil society in the United States. There is a media in United States. They are pro-democracy, they are liberal. I also write for Washington Post. And I write for Washington Post because it is very pro-democratic, it is liberal. They always support women's rights, they always support media freedom. So I am not talking about the American people. I am talking about the American policies which are, there are contradictions, and I don't think that in my part of the world, the Americans are trying to impose democracy or Americans are trying to promote democracy. And the biggest example is the Doha Agreement last year, which was signed in Qatar with Taliban. And there is no guarantee in the Doha Agreement that the new government in Afghanistan will be a democratically elected government. No, the Taliban don't believe in democracy. And I think that after the fall of Kabul, the CIA chief met the Taliban leaders in Kabul. He never asked them to bring democracy in Afghanistan. He was only telling them that please help us in early evacuation, and that's all. They only protect their interest. They don't protect or promote democracy in our part of the world. This is my observation. You may differ with me, but this is what I think.
Hello, good afternoon. The Taliban are not a monolithic movement, even though we always refer to the Taliban as a single, let's say, a single movement, but it has several souls. It has a political, diplomatic wing. It has a military wing. So now that they are going from insurrection, let's say, to government, there are some rifts that are coming to the surface. We are seeing lately some internal divisions. What do you think of these divisions at this critical time? How will they reflect on the movement and their ability to move forward with their own idea of government, of the emirate, Islamic Emirate?
You see, I think that this is a very challenging time for their government. This is not 1996-97. This is 2021. And yes, they have captured the whole of Afghanistan. But in last 1 month, the best example of resistance and courage and bravery was shown by the women of Afghanistan who are without any arms. They don't have any arms in their hands. But on the streets of Kabul, they came out in small numbers, but they were fearless, they were brave. They raised slogans in the support of their rights, and Taliban were not able to stop them. And when those women were not ready to listen to Taliban, so the Taliban started beating some journalists who were covering that protest. So you see, now this is the responsibility of Taliban to provide peace and security to Afghanistan. This is their responsibility to provide jobs to the youth. And they made promises in the Doha Agreement that they will make an inclusive government. But the government which was announced by them, there is no women in that government. There are no other political groups represented in that agreement. First of all, they took over Kabul in violation of the Doha Agreement, and then after that, the government which was announced by them, it was also in the violation of the Doha Agreement. But on the other side, you see, I think that there is a need to engage them. Engagement is not endorsement. For example, just few days back, the special representative of United Nations in Afghanistan, she's a woman, and she met with the Taliban leaders. And this time the Taliban leaders had no problem in meeting a female diplomat. In 1997, when I was talking to Taliban, they had problem with 2 women. But this time, they met with the female diplomat of the UN. The same UN have blacklisted some Taliban leaders all over the world. They cannot travel. But why the United Nations is engaging Taliban? Because maybe your and my problem is with Taliban, but we have no problem with the people of Afghanistan. There are children, there are women. They are out of food. They need food, they need medicines. So the United Nations want to continue their humanitarian operations in Afghanistan. So I think that we need engagement, and through the engagement we must put pressure on them to implement the Doha Agreement. And the international community should only recognize them if they are ready to implement the Doha Agreement, and if they are ready to provide protection to the women's rights and the ethnic minorities in Afghanistan. Yes, there are reports of their internal rifts. The biggest evidence was the rise of ISIS in Afghanistan. When the Americans started talks with the Taliban, some of the hardliners in the ranks of Taliban, they were against peace talks with the Americans, so they left Taliban and they joined ISIS. So I think that this is a ground reality, but Afghanistan should not become a failed state. If Afghanistan will become a failed state, then there are many, there is a threat that some militant groups from different regions, they will come to Afghanistan and they will try to organize more attacks, they will try to destabilize the whole region. And I will again give you the example. Sudan was a weak state. Sudan was not a failed state. Osama bin Laden was hiding in Sudan. The Saudis and the Americans put pressure on Sudan, and he left Sudan and he came to Afghanistan, which was a failed state. And then Al-Qaeda and their allies, they used that failed state to organize 9/11 attacks. So we should not provide an opportunity to these extremist groups that they should use the territory of Afghanistan once again to organize more attacks. That's why I think that if the United Nations special representative in Afghanistan, who is a female diplomat, if she is meeting Taliban, the other diplomats from the other countries, they should also meet them and put pressure on them to implement the Doha Agreement. Doha Agreement is implemented. If it is implemented, then journalists like me can say that this is a win-win situation for both Taliban and United States in Afghanistan. No, the Taliban have never defeated United States. It's a win-win situation for both of them, because both the parties, they signed the Doha Agreement and now it is implemented. So it is a win-win situation for both of them. So if the Doha Agreement is not implemented, then the Taliban will be in a position to claim that we have defeated a superpower, and this is more dangerous.
Buon pomeriggio. L'Afghanistan è, se non uno dei più grandi produttori di oppio al mondo. Dobbiamo aspettarci che i talebani combatteranno questa produzione o che ne approfitteranno per utilizzarla come finanziamento?
This is a very important question. You see, you are living in Switzerland and talking to me in Switzerland, but if we will not deal with this problem of drug traffic from Afghanistan and Pakistan, from Iran, other countries of that region, you must realize, and you cannot deny the fact, that these drugs will ultimately come to Europe, and if they can send these drugs to Europe, they can also send it in Switzerland. So dealing the problem of drug trafficking and the opium growth is very important in Afghanistan. they have announced an interim government recently, and one minister is appointed for controlling the drug traffic. Now, if they have appointed one minister especially for the drug traffic, it means this is a problem there. And that's why your question is very valid. Now, why I am saying, I am suggesting to engage them, and I am saying it again and again, engagement is not endorsement. United Nations diplomats can talk to Taliban and they can share their information with them that we have this information that opium is produced in this province of Afghanistan, this city of Afghanistan, this mountain valley of Afghanistan. Please try to stop it. That's how you can offer them some incentives. You can engage them. Then you can make some very strong border control measures around Afghanistan. For that, you also need their cooperation. If they are ready to cooperate with you, then it means that they are showing some flexibility. If they are not ready to cooperate with you in dealing with this drug traffic problem or some other problems, then you should not provide them any assistance or you should not engage them. But this problem is very important. And I said in the beginning of my talk that we have witnessed the failures of our security agencies. So the security agencies, they have, it is proven that they were failed many times, and there is no assurance that they will successfully try to stop the drug smuggling from Afghanistan to Pakistan and Iran and Europe. This is very important, and the international community should do something collectively to control this drug traffic. It is equally dangerous. Terrorism is also dangerous. Terrorism only kills few hundred people in one bomb blast. But the drug traffic, the drugs, they destroy your whole generation. So it is more dangerous than terrorism. So we have to deal this problem very effectively. I am very sensitive on this issue because this problem is growing in Pakistan. If it is growing in my country, it will grow in other countries.
Grazie, grazie a Midmir. Grazie mille a Stefano Piazza che lo ha accompagnato. Grazie di cuore, ha fatto un lungo viaggio per essere qua con noi. Ci ha veramente dato una visione del mondo incredibile. Siamo onoratissimi di averlo qui, quindi grazie di cuore.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Midmir. Permettetemi due parole perché questa è la conclusione del nostro festival, di questa nostra terza edizione. Ci sono alcuni ringraziamenti che sono dovuti, doverosi. Il primo, naturalmente, è alla città di Lugano, che ci ha accolto fin dalla prima edizione, quando veramente eravamo piccoli, e ci sta aiutando a crescere. Questo per noi è importantissimo, quindi ci tengo a ringraziare tantissimo la città di Lugano, ma anche tutti i nostri sponsor, i nostri partner, perché senza di loro noi non potremmo crescere e oggi non potremmo essere qui. Quindi grazie a tutti quelli che ci sostengono. Speriamo di avere sempre il vostro appoggio, perché per noi è importante, e poi naturalmente grazie a tutti voi, perché anche voi fate parte del festival e noi vogliamo che questo festival diventi un po' una famiglia, dove tutti si ritrovano una volta all'anno, a settembre, per ascoltare le storie del mondo, le storie come quelle del signor Hamid e come le voci che abbiamo portato quest'anno e speriamo tante altre nei prossimi. Quindi vi diamo appuntamento al prossimo settembre. Grazie mille a tutti.